Well, hello and welcome to all of our viewers here today. I'm Fiona Lang Sharp, IBCLC Director of Communications and MC here at Gold Learning. Well, here today with Ted Grenier, and he is going to be coming up at our Gold Lactation Conference 2020, and he's going to be talking about alcohol consumption during lactation. Now, of course, this is a topic that gets asked a lot about, and Ted is going to be here sharing some of the research that he's going to be discussing and talking about some of the things that are involved in all of those things. But before that, I would like it if Ted, you would introduce yourself, perhaps share with everybody where you are in the world, and tell them what you're doing these days.
Well, first of all, I'm Ted Greiner, which is the German version, rather than the Grenier, which is the French version. Uh,
Excellent.
yeah, I'm living in my wife's hometown in Northeast Brazil, lazily learning Portuguese. After retiring in 2015, I had been professor of nutrition in the best food and nutrition department in South Korea for 7 years. And before that, I worked for an American nonprofit for 4 years. Before that, I was the nutrition advisor to the Swedish government for 19 years.
Wow.
And before that, I was working in Yemen and did my PhD work in Yemen. It was a Rockefeller Foundation funded project to promote breastfeeding in the country of North Yemen at that time. Before that, I did a PhD at Cornell University in international nutrition, and my master's degree was looking at how advertising affects how mothers in a poor Caribbean country, St. Vincent, how they feed their babies.
Oh, interesting.
So I've been working on breastfeeding since 1974.
Wow.
Many different ways, never with personal counseling, anything like that. Mostly as a researcher, a policy person. I was involved, in fact, the person who discovered exclusive breastfeeding was my first wife, Stina Omroth, Swedish. So that's why I went to Sweden. So I'm always going to my wife's countries. Sorry, that's probably a bad joke. Anyway, now I'm the editor of a journal named World Nutrition,
Right.
which does have a pretty lot of breastfeeding articles. It's the Journal of the World Public Health Nutrition Association. So that's volunteer work. The article that I'm basing this presentation on is a literature review that I gradually worked on over a 10-year period on the issues related to breastfeeding and alcohol use. My interest in it was piqued from a Twitter storm that I started back in 2008 when somebody from Singapore tweeted and said, "Oh, I just saw a woman breastfeeding and drinking beer at the same time. Is that good?" And somebody wrote, "Yes, that's exactly what you should do. Drink alcohol while you breastfeed." I wrote and said, "Well, I don't really think the research shows that," or something like that. And boy,
Right.
I was called Hitler by the end. So I began researching on it. Actually, did a research project on the issue of how messages delivered to women influence how they drink, how they plan to drink, and how they plan to breastfeed. This was done with university students in South Korea.
Right.
And we exposed them to 3 different messages. Weirdly enough, in that culture, the very liberal message basically said you can breastfeed and drink any amount you want. Not quite that liberal. That scared them, and it led to their planning to breastfeed less. Whereas the message was more scientific that said, yeah, you can use it moderately, but then you probably should schedule your breastfeeding so you don't expose the baby to the alcohol. That one led to didn't have any effect on their intention to breastfeed. Because in that culture, a young woman is expected, she expects to be told what to do. So
Right.
putting it in her ball court made her nervous, apparently. Anyway, I feel like that kind of research is needed in every culture. We're just basically shooting from the hip on this issue. We're just
Right.
assuming that there's a certain amount of certain number of women that are going to reduce how much they breastfeed or not even initiate breastfeeding at all. If
Right.
we tell them the truth about that, as far as we know it so far, about alcohol and breastfeeding. And my approach is to let's empower women, let them decide, of course, but at least let them decide based on knowledge of the issues as far as we understand them based on the research that exists,
Sure.
which is pretty primitive, pretty basic. We don't really have much research yet, but at least we should be evidence based on this, I think, like everything else. And the way we talk about it, the way we present it, should be done in ways that we hope won't discourage women from breastfeeding.
No, for
Or
sure.
get, yeah. But there's some evidence, it's again not fantastic, but there's some evidence that women who use breastfeeding tend to exclusively breastfeed less. And my
Right.
presentation is going to go through a number of lines of research that explain why that could be the case, how that could be the case. That's the
Yeah.
main focus of the presentation, really.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
So
I
my
mean,
argument is that if you decide not to talk about this, which is
right.
not any longer, but it's been the breastfeeding community's way of approaching it, especially I mention his name because I've talked to him about this before. Jack Newman basically says, women have so many other barriers, so many other problems. Let's just leave this one out. Let them breastfeed and use alcohol any way they want so we don't have any risk of doing any harm in how much they breastfeed. And I'd like to shift that paradigm into
Sure.
let's empower them. Let's give them the information, let them decide, but at least they should know what they're getting into and what their options are.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think lots of things you said there are so relevant to, I think, even the mindset of how the consumer, the parent, the breastfeeding parent generally thinks today. And they want to know the truth. They want to know the impacts and because they want to be able to breastfeed and they want to do it safely. And I think that I think the old some of the old way of thinking would be just to bury it or just assume or guess or whatever, but I think things really have shifted, in a lot of respects. But again, maybe not from the professional side either, because I think professionals still, depending on when they were trained or what they trained in, maybe not giving accurate, updated information as well. And I can put myself in that category, Ted. I mean, I'm just as vulnerable or susceptible to training quite some years ago, not changing my language or my messaging. So this will be really fantastic just to look at this and get updated and provide, which I think is important, the evidence to the parents to make an informed decision, because that is something we talk about as being the most important and valuable thing. So thank you so much. This is really going to be a great presentation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
And thank you to everyone listening in. Don't forget, you can come and listen to Ted. He's going to be with us on our live conference here at Gold Lactation and speaking to alcohol consumption during lactation. He's going to be here with us live on Wednesday, the 15th of April. And if you can't make that live session, then of course you'll be able to listen to the recorded event as well. You can go to our website and register for our full conference at goldlactation.com and join us for our free presentation, our opening keynote on April 30th, or on March 30th, excuse me, coming up right away. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.